So this is the video for 8.1, statistical questions and variables. For this week, we're just going to be going through once per day. We're going to go through one section of chapter 8. The first two videos are going to be a little bit different than normal because there's just a lot of vocab and a lot of pictures that go along with it. So instead of just having me handwrite everything, it's going to be in a PowerPoint format. That way, hopefully it's easier for you guys to read and it doesn't take as long to just get through all the writing. Okay, so let's just go ahead and start with a couple examples. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is a statistical question. It is a question that can be answered by collecting many pieces of information or data and then summarizing the data. Okay, so this chapter focuses on statistics, so we're mostly going to be focusing on statistical questions. So this is why we're doing this first. Okay, so which of the following is a statistical question then? So this has to be, you have to be able to answer it by collecting many pieces of information and then summarizing all that information, okay? So we have two questions to consider. In what month is your birthday? And what month has the most birthdays of students at your school, okay? Well, question one can be answered using only one piece of information, your birthday, okay? That's all that was asked. And what month is your birthday? That's only one piece of information. That's not really many. However, question two can be answered by collecting many pieces of information because it says what month has the most birthdays of students at your school. So you could ask multiple students when their birthday is and get multiple answers. And then you could summarize that data by determining which month has the most birthdays, okay? So because question two can be answered by collecting many different pieces of information, such as birthdays from many different students at the school, and then from all that information you can decide which month has the most birthdays. Question two is the statistical question, okay? So another way, like just think, can I answer this with only one piece of information, or can I answer it with many pieces of information? Is there a way for me to summarize this data to come to a conclusion or not? Okay. All right, next set of vocab. All right, so we have two variables to go through. We have categorical variables. So this is data that falls into categories or that indicate a qualitative rather than a quantitative attribute. So what this really means is a categorical variable. It's kind of like an opinion question, which is what qualitative kind of means. It means like more like an opinion. Quantitative just means like numbers, something you can count. So you can't really count an opinion if you're asked what your favorite color is. That would be a categorical variable, okay? And then we have quantitative variable. This is numerical data that can be counted, added, subtracted, or otherwise operated on, okay? So the difference is that quantitative, it will be like a number. Categorical will be just kind of like an opinion, like what your favorite color is. So basically what would happen is you would ask a statistical question, and then these are the two types of answers you could get. You could either get answers that are kind of like opinion answers that fall into categories, or you could get answers that are numbers that you can add and subtract, okay? So let's figure out what type of variable is represented by the following questions. Question one, what is your favorite Olympic sport? So possible answers to this question could end up being types of sports, okay? You could say that your favorite sport is like the swimming, or you could say that your favorite is snowboarding, okay? If it's asking your favorite, it's pretty much asking like your opinion. It's a qualitative answer, okay? It's what is your favorite sport? What's your opinion on this sport, okay? So since answers would fall into a set of categories, the categories here being sports, this would be a categorical variable, okay? Again, your answer is not going to be a number. You're not going to say my favorite Olympic sport is number 2, okay? Or I have 2 favorite Olympic sports. You would say what is your favorite Olympic sport, and you would give one sport. So that would be your category here is sports. And since it's an opinion question, again, this is a categorical variable, okay? What about the next one? What is the typical number of apps a teenager has on a smartphone, okay? So with this question, the answers would be quantities, the number of apps on a phone. You could look at your phone right now and count the number of apps that you have. And since your answer would be you counting the numbers of apps on your phone, this would be a quantitative variable, okay? This is not an opinion question. It's not asking, what do you think should be the number of apps you have? It's asking for a fixed number. What number do you have on your phone? And it would be an answer where you would actually count the number that you have and give a number as your answer. So because of that, this would be a quantitative variable. Okay. All right. Next set of vocab. Okay. So a population is the set of all members of a group that you want to know something about. A sample is a subset of the population that is being studied to answer a statistical question. So you have your statistical question, what you want to ask people to get an answer to. These are the two groups that you could ask that question, okay? So the one way to think about it is the population is going to always be the larger group of people, and a sample is going to be like a smaller set inside, okay? So a population could be the population of the state of Florida, and a sample of that population could only be the people that live in the city of Tampa, okay? The population is the larger group. The sample is going to be the smaller group, okay? So if you want to know, like, out of all the people in Florida, what month has the most birthdays, that might be too many people to ask. So what you could do is just pick a sample of that population and ask a smaller sample that question instead, which could be a more manageable number of people to ask, okay? So let's do some examples. A school newspaper randomly selects 30 students from each grade level to participate in a survey to determine the opinions of students at the school. What is the relationship between the sophomore surveyed, all the students surveyed, and all the students at the school? Okay. So we have a couple different groups here. So all the students at the school is going to be the population. That's going to be the larger group. Okay, the largest group here is going to be the entire school population. And then the students and sophomores that they surveyed is just a small sample, okay? They're selecting 30 students from each grade level only because maybe trying to survey the entire school would be too much. So let's say the entire school's population is about 3,000. That might be too many people to ask. So instead you would pick a smaller sample. You would only pick 30 students from each grade level to ask that question, and that smaller group would be your sample, okay? So all the sophomores surveyed and the students that they ended up surveying would be a small sample of students at the school, okay? Population is always going to be the larger group. The sample is going to be the smaller group that you decide to ask that question for. Okay? Next one. A polling organization randomly chose eligible voters in the state of Illinois to ask who they would vote for in an upcoming election. What are the sample and population in this scenario? Okay, so the population would be all the eligible voters in Illinois, because that's who they are concerned about for this question. Eligible voters in the state of Illinois. Okay. However, the entire state of Illinois might be too big of a population size to actually ask that question to. So instead, they just chose random voters to ask that question to. So the sample would really just be the smaller group of people that they asked their question of. Okay, so the population would be the entire state of Illinois, but that might be too many people to poll. So instead, they just chose a random sample of voters, which would be a smaller group and would be easier to ask that question about. Okay. And our last set of vocab for today, we have parameter, which is a measure that describes a population. And then we have statistic, which is a measure that describes a sample of the population. So the parameter goes with population, P and P. Statistics goes with sample, S and S. Okay, so there's one way to remember it. Okay, so the parameter is basically just data about the whole population. A statistic is basically data about the smaller sample size. Okay, so is each quantity given a statistic or a parameter? So number one, a high school has 3 lunch periods. In a randomly selected lunch period, 24% of students brought lunch from home. Okay, so the population here, again, we're talking about a high school. So the entire population would be all of the students at this high school. Okay, Now, the statistic, the number that we are given, this 24%, is only randomly selected lunch period. So only one lunch period out of that school got asked or was observed to see if they brought lunch from home. So since 24%, it's describing a smaller subset, it's describing a sample of that population, the 24% is a statistic. Now, if they had polled the entire school and they said out of the entire school, this is how many students brought lunch from home, that could then be a parameter. But since they only selected one specific lunch period, only a small portion of the school, this value that we're given is a statistic. Okay, it's information about a smaller group, not the entire group. Okay, next one. Movie theater collected data on how well its concession stand operated that year. The theater used its total yearly concession sales and number of tickets sold to calculate that the mean amount spent at concessions by a moviegoer was $8.14. So here we have a movie theater. The population would be all of the people that went to that movie theater for that year. Okay, so the value that we're given, the $8.14, it describes the average concession purchases of all the moviegoers, okay? Because it said it used its total yearly concession sales, okay? So since it used the entire group of people that went to that theater that year, this includes all moviegoers, meaning that this is a parameter, okay? Statistics for this question would be only if they had looked at the people that went in the month of like maybe March, okay? But instead of just looking at one specific month in that year, they looked at the entire year of people that spent money at the concessions. So since they looked at the total yearly sales and their average was $8.14, this is a parameter, okay? So a population is the bigger group. A parameter describes the bigger group. A sample is a smaller group. The statistic describes the smaller group. Okay, so think about it that way. And that's it for 8.4. So just make sure that you answer the homework questions. And that's all.